Hello YouTube viewers and subscribers. So today I'm going to talk just a little bit about what I use as an after-run oil for my engines. Now, for many years I've always used Marvel Mystery Oil, and this is exactly what it looks like. Now there are tons and tons of things you could put in your engine after running it to preserve it. But before I go into any more of that, let me talk a little bit about why I do this. And it kind of goes way back to the days when I first started flying, which was in 1988, days before the internet. So in those days, the summation of all the knowledge you acquired about the hobby most likely came from either reading magazines, which there were abundance of then, or your experiences at the flying field and the folks you worked with or flew with and taught you how to fly, tune engines, etc. Now, I learned all of these things in Central Missouri because I was in the Air Force at Whiteman Air Force Base at the time, and then I went on to study at the University of Central Missouri, which in those days was called Central Missouri State University. And I had the president of the club at the time was a very awesome gentleman. His name was Al Blankenship, and he was the lead professor for aviation technology, because Central Missouri State University, or the University of Central Missouri, I think as it's called now, is a big aviation school. They have their own airport, and they have, one of the programs is teaching you how to fly full-scale aircraft. So Mr. Blankenship was actually the professor for the reciprocating power plants class, where we would disassemble full-scale civilian aircraft engines, put them back together, and that type of thing. So anyway, I learned a lot of what I learned as far as tuning engines, airplane engines, flying, and everything from personal, close experience with the people that I experienced it with. Obviously, because that was in the days before the internet. Now, unfortunately, many younger folks that are entering the hobby now, and many millennials, don't even remember a time in their life when there wasn't an internet. So unfortunately, they don't necessarily have the same amount of personal hands-on experience at the flying field as I did then, because we didn't have any other choice. Now with the internet, there's all sorts of internet forums and stuff like that where you can go and solicit opinions and advice, and that's all well and good for today's society. But in my opinion, when it comes to what I do as a hobby and this kind of thing, I'll take my experience and what I've done for over 30 years over some nameless, faceless person on the internet that's spouting off a bunch of their opinions and their experience, because quite honestly, I'm inherently distrustful of people on the internet. I only really trust people that I can meet, shake their hands, and talk to face to face. So that's why when I go on the forums, I laugh a lot. I post a little bit, but that's going to be coming to an end very soon too, because I don't need people's opinions or comments or experience on the internet, because I've got my own, and I've had it for over 30 years now, and I know what works for me. And the reason I'm even talking about this now is because there was a thread on RC Groups recently about after-run oil, and I mentioned that, I use Marvel Mystery Oil. Well, I quickly got crucified because this that I actually use is actually, let's see here, it says it's an engine oil treatment, I believe. It says add to gas and oil, helps engine extend life, improves fuel economy, blah, blah, blah. Cleans the engine from the inside out. Like I said, there's a ton of different things that you can put in your engine. There's Corrosion X, there's automatic transmission fluid. You could put regular motor oil in there. But what I've got here is just a shot glass that hopefully I won't be needing for a while. I put a bearing in here, and it wasn't a new bearing. It was a bearing I put in my ultrasonic cleaner, and I cleaned it. I don't care what the condition of the bearing is. That isn't the point. But I filled it just enough to cover the bearing completely with some of my Marvel Mystery Oil, because some of the people on the thread were saying, oh, well, this stuff's going to evaporate and leave a crusty mess, and it's not good for preserving engines, even though I've used it for damn near 30 years and I've never had a problem. So this could be a very long-term experiment, but suffice it to say that this has been in here for, I don't know, several weeks, but unfortunately I don't have 5 or 6 years because I'm pretty sure I'm going to want to use this shot glass before another 5 or 6 years are up. But I did take a picture of the weight of this with the bearing, the shot glass, and the oil a few weeks ago, and I want to do another weight test right now to show what it weighs now. And it still says 102 grams, and I can show you a picture of from earlier when I weighed this. And the point here is that and this has been in my room in an air-conditioned, environmentally controlled area with very dry air, so if there was anything in here that was volatile and was going to evaporate out and leave a mess, it would have done it by now, trust me. Or it's going to continue to do it because I'm going to keep this in this container for as long as I don't really need this shot glass. But my point is that the keys to preserving your engine depend on a couple of things. First, how long are you planning on preserving your engine? If you're going to preserve an engine for 5 to 10 years, well then yeah, maybe this isn't the best thing to use, but I've used it. I don't ever store engines for that long because I take better care of my engines. I touch all of my engines on a more regular basis and turn them over and stuff, so I don't go storing engines for 10, 15 years and expect them to be perfect, because I just don't do that. When I'm going to store an engine, it's going to get stored for maybe 1.5 years, 2 years tops, just because it goes to the bottom of my bin, and that takes a while for me to cycle through touching them. So I'm talking maybe 1 year to 2 years tops, and even before I started my channel, I had stored engines for 5, 7 years with Marvel Mystery Oil and never had an issue either. I can't prove that, but all I can say is that's what I've had happen. So the keys really are, for using an after-run oil, is determine how long you're going to be trying to store your engine. If it's only for a few weeks, then you probably don't even need after-run oil at all. If it's going to be for 6 months or longer, then you probably need to preserve it in some way, some fashion. But the key for short-term storage, say over the winter, I've just been flying all summer and now I've got to shut my engines down for the winter. The key, after even during the summer flying session, is shut your engine down properly. Always pinch or pull off the fuel tubing while your engine is running the full throttle, and burn off all that nitromethane and methanol in there. And once it stops, flick it some more with a glow igniter on there just to make sure you've got all that burn off. And then all you've got left in your engine is the oil that was in the fuel. That's enough to keep your engine protected for many weeks. Now, if you're going to store it over the winter time in an uncontrolled area, yes, I would put an after-run oil of some sort in there. Now, many people will actually fill an engine with oil. I mean, literally, they will take covers off and fill the engine with oil. That's fine and dandy if you want to do that. There's nothing wrong with that, but just remember that that's what you did when you go to run it next, because otherwise you're going to have a huge frickin' mess. Personally, I usually put enough in there so that it puts a light coating of oil on the parts. I don't go filling it up. I just know that I can put enough in there from experience that it's going to put a light coating of oil on the parts, because that's really all that's necessary. But like I said, people will say, well, maybe you should just use Marvel Air Tool oil. And you know what? In all these years, I've never ever used Marvel Air Tool oil because, well, here's some reasons. It's not that easy to find. The stores that I frequent and the auto parts stores that I go to never seem to sell that, because air tool oil isn't something you normally find at an auto parts store. This is readily available. I can find it everywhere I go. Walmart, any auto parts store, I can find it because it's a engine additive or whatever. It smells great. That's one of the reasons that, believe it or not, that's one of the reasons I really like this, because every time I smell Marvel Mystery Oil, it brings me back to a happier time in my life when I was learning this hobby, learning to tune engines and learning to fly. And these happy memories are things that I want to keep going with me. Now, I've bought engines from people that use Corrosion X, and I'm sure Corrosion X is a superior product, but you know what? It's super expensive and it's hard to find. It's not like you just go to the corner store and find some Corrosion X. That, and it smells like complete crap. In the initial picture of this video, I showed a bottle of automatic transmission fluid. You can use that too. again, smells like crap. So if I can use a product that works well, proven that it works well, and smells great and brings back great memories when I use it, I'm going to use it. My final comments on this would be that, you know, I go back to the days before the internet, and all we had was face-to-face contact with people. Now, not so much. Now we interact with a lot of different people without ever having shaken their hands or looked them in the eyes. And that, in my opinion, is a really unfortunate state of affairs, but it's just the way the world is. So, you know, go on those forums and solicit opinions and advice from people, but it's a grab bag. But at least you know that when you visit my channel, I'm not just some keyboard typist spouting off a bunch of crap on forums. I at least am posting videos with proof that what I do, what I know, works. And I'm certainly not saying that I'm an expert on anything, because I've never ever claimed to be an expert on glow engine tuning, operation, maintenance, or anything. Never have I ever claimed to be an expert on that, and I don't claim to. I never will. And I certainly never push my methods on anybody. It's just, I'm posting videos, this is how I do things. They're not necessarily always right, and they're not necessarily always your way. But they are what they are, they're my way, and I have experience that proves that they're right. And when I come across something that I do that's wrong, I openly admit it. Not a problem. I have no problem admitting that I'm wrong. But when it comes to using this after run, Marvel Mystery Oil as an after run oil, in my opinion, I'm not wrong, because hundreds of engines of mine have had it over the years, and I've never had a problem with it. And even if I do stumble across one of my engines that's stuck or tight, gummed up because I forgot to put some after run oil in it, not really a big deal. I have after run oil, I have a heat gun, I have the tools and means to remedy that situation anyway, so it's not a catastrophic issue for me. In fact, it gives me something to do. So that's my short, well, maybe not so short, video rant on why I use Marvel Mystery Oil and why I think internet forums, and particularly RC groups, can just kiss my ass, because I don't need your comments or your opinions when I've got my own experience to back me up.